Among the mercenaries encamped atop Kostrak Plateau, Unicorn was invited to a friendly pickup game of Claw between the menagerie and the orcs of the burg below. Against all odds, the mercenaries won this match, and afterwards Unicorn was approached by Throka Clawcatch, the team's captain, and offered a place on their local team, the Kostrak Kingfishers. Meanwhile, the commander's tense journey back to the Cradle began with a rocky start. Chimera refused to go anywhere near Kondra Cross, and instead insisted on fording the icy river Iresht. En route to the Cradle, they were confronted by a small group of Urgasso orcs, intent on reclaiming Umber's captured Megaloceros. Though Umber stoutly refused, it was Griffin who detected that Throka Steelsword not only arranged for this waylay, but also bore some Urgasso descent himself. When the Commander's 10 delivered their report to Throka Thrak that the cities of the Schism would go to war, he was less than pleased, but nonetheless accepted the results. There was much preparation to do in the following months before the spring thaw would permit invasion from the north. For the next 2 months, the menagerie lingered in Throka's Cradle, readying for war and resolving many personal quests and objectives. In his archery lessons with Willow, Remoraz was beginning to plateau. He was a competent archer, certainly, but Willow's easy manner and instinctive style allowed her to literally shoot his arrows out of the air. Much later, an accidental fire in the campsite spooked Displacer, stirring up memories of Kondra Cross. When Willow asked Remoraz about this, he lied and obscured the truth, that he knew much about what haunted Displacer. It seemed that whatever happened at Kondra Cross, Willow, who was also a veteran of the Night Wars, is not aware of it. After nearly a year of travel and anxiety, it was time for Dûnya Dragonbane's procedure. Though recently separated, Umber agreed to accompany her to Setchad, an orcish burg known for its bone shaping. Along the way, Umber detected that Dûnya still held out hope that perhaps after her procedure they could resume their relationship. High in the mountainous burg, Umber and Dûnya met Throka Facefang, the most competent bone shaper in the Corv, and she walked through the procedure with Dûnya. According to the Bone Shaper, the months since the initial injury meant it was likely that Dûnya would never have the same mobility again, and what's more, due to the extreme pain of reshaping the bones inside her body, it was possible that Dûnya might die in the process. Nonetheless, Dûnya agreed to go ahead with the procedure, and Umber agreed to stay by her side. Back in Kostrak, Griffin approached a drunken Chimera with the idea of appointing captains to help give the company some structure and to help raise morale. While receptive to the idea, Chimera let slip that she didn't wish to be the commander any longer, and that she longed for the life that Throka Thrak led, here amongst his people, a true orcish Thrak. While recruiting allies like Cyclops and Troll to his new Claw team, Unicorn stumbled into a new mystery. It seemed Throka Widewaste, the Javshar, or mayor of Kostrak, was murdered by a steel dagger, a dagger belonging to Cyclops. Tasked by Throka Manymother to get to the bottom of this before it exploded into something worse, Unicorn gathered the commander's tent to investigate the killing. And that's where we ended the session. How did it go? I think it went pretty well. It was kind of a transitional session, kind of wrapping up the negotiation plot, checking in with Unicorn, and then transitioning into our kind of seasonal downtime arc that's going to take the next 2 to 3 episodes to conclude. So to answer our question from last episode, where was Unicorn this whole time? Because Kate missed 2 sessions, we thought it was better for them just not to go on the negotiation mission. Instead, we decided that Unicorn had stayed behind in Kostrak, and it was a good opportunity for me to reintroduce the idea of Claw, the orcish blend of lacrosse and rugby, back into the campaign. I was really happy that Kate took to it as much as she did. I know she's a big fan of Ted Lasso, and I loved the idea of setting up this plot of this inspirational sports movie happening in the background of all this war and death. So we met Throka Clawcatch, who is the captain of the Kostrak Kingfishers, and the Kostrak Kingfishers are, of course, the lowest ranked team in the Throka's Cradle Claw League. There's sort of one team from each of the 10 burgs, and they compete in a yearly competition against one another. So, of course, the mercenaries had to join the worst ranked team, that way they can Mighty Ducks their way up to the state championships or whatever. I did have a weird little beat that I wanted to hit on the way back to the Cradle, and that was that scene with Yeshrok, the Megaloceros, and with Throka Steelsword. It was Griffin who, with a natural 20 on his insight, discovered that Steelsword has Urgasso ancestry, and that he likely arranged for this strange meeting, as though something about Umber keeping this giant deer, this, dire elk, was rubbing him the wrong way. He didn't push it, but it is definitely a plotline that we will see come up again in the near future. More importantly, though, this episode was the beginning of a little experiment that I'm trying. Often in ancient and medieval war, the seasons are really important, determining when armies can march and when they can be resupplied and things like that. So I wanted to play with that here and say, as we were heading into winter, it would still be several months before the war would actually kick off, but that would give them time to kind of resupply and to train their troops and to maybe resolve some personal quests here in the Cradle. And so what we're doing is that we are in this kind of timey-wimey downtime section where it ostensibly takes place over about 120 days, 2 months on the On-Dûn calendar, but 4 months in our calendar. And I asked each one of the players to give me 3 plot lines that they wanted to pursue during this downtime. These could be personal quests, they could be related to the war, that kind of a thing, right? And so I got a bunch of different ideas from the players, and then I also added in 3 of my own for sort of like events that might happen in the Cradle while they're passing all this time. And so the way it works is that we go around from the different players, and I ask them like, hey, which one of the plots do you want to pursue? And then depending on which one they pick, each plot is like a 3-scene little mini arc, right? You have a first scene, like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then as we move between the scenes, they'll kind of be accomplishing these goals. They can also choose not to engage with one of these plots, and they can do scenes of their own if they want to go talk to Chimera or they want to do whatever. So we're going to talk about which plots and scenes they picked this week, but I imagine for the next couple of episodes, there'll be a lot of pursuing their personal plots and cleaning up these loose ends. So we're going to start with Remoraz. Remoraz wanted to do some archery lessons and have some scenes with Willow. And so the idea here is that each one of the scenes of this plot is Willow kind of criticizing something about Remoraz's shooting style. Hallie and I talked about Remoraz as an archer and how they're so disciplined and so practiced. We wanted to make archery kind of the opposite of elven sword fighting. Elven sword fighting is all about rigorous rehearsal and perfection and precision, whereas we like the idea that elven archery is more emotional and it's about how you feel and it's less technical. I don't know if that's actually true to swordplay and archery, but it's a fantasy story. And so each one of these scenes then is designed to have Willow challenge Remoraz and put them in kind of an impossible situation to see if he can overcome them. So this time the idea was that Remoraz is taking too long to shoot, taking such a long time, being so predictable that Willow was able to string and loose an arrow to knock his arrows out of the air before he can. So I'm setting up these little mechanical challenges for Hallie to try to overcome as an archer. If he does them, I want to have Remoraz get rewarded with some like bow flourishes that he can use in combat. We also, though, had a scene with Displacer and Willow and that fire. There was a little accidental fire that got kicked up in the camp. And it revealed that while some veterans of the Night Wars, Chimera, Beholder, obviously Displacer, seem to know what happened at Kondra Cross, not all of them do, and namely, not Willow. Somehow Remoraz has kept the secret from Willow over all of these years, and it was interesting to see that kind of come to the forefront here for the first time. Like I said, we are slowly teasing Kondra Cross out over the course of all these sessions, and sooner or later we're going to have to confront the terrible truth behind it. Umber's plot this episode was all about Dûnya and the procedure. There was one little extra scene that got added that I wasn't necessarily intending, but the consequence of that was I liked the notion that Dûnya is maybe holding out this hope that if the procedure goes well and everything works out, that maybe she and Umber can get back together. That's obviously not what Steven or Umber wants, but it adds this extra level of drama to it. The procedure is tricky to me because I definitely don't want to present a world in which disability just gets erased, but I also liked the idea that she would seek some means of basically physical therapy in order to reclaim some of the activities that she used to like to do. So it was very important to me to establish that there is no chance that Dûnya just gets it cured forever, that Dûnya will have to deal with this, and, there'll be accessibility issues and things like that for the character as we go forward. But it was a really important reason to bring her here, and it says a lot about the culture of the orcs that they have this kind of bone-shaping magic. It's a form of necromancy, but it allows them to move bones around, both to make their structures and to make their tools and equipment, but also as a form of medicine to reset living bones inside people's bodies. But I wanted it to feel like a big, kind of complicated procedure. So there's a little skill challenge we'll be doing next session, where Umber will have to see if he can help out the bone shapers and kind of keep Dûnya calm as this procedure is done on her body. There is a chance that if he just absolutely tanks it and I get some bad rolls, then Dûnya might not survive. So we will see what happens. And then lastly, Griffin didn't choose one of his plots, but he did start a new idea where he wants to try to reorganize the company. Cody's ideas are a little bit loose on this right now, so we haven't nailed anything down, but he's hoping that by kind of restructuring the power structure that he can earn some trust back, because I think he is worried about the sort of perceived nepotism of him and Umber and Chimera's kind of close friends and family having this sort of unofficial power. So he wants to try to, I think, decouple that power from the company. What form that will take exactly, we'll have to see as we go forward. But it took me a little bit by surprise because Cody hadn't talked to me about it beforehand. So I was kind of trying to sure, man, what are you imagining, right? So we will see where that goes. But he does still have several other plots lined up for this sort of winter season that we're doing in our downtime. And then lastly, we ended the session with the introduction of one of the 3 plots that I came up with. I'm calling it a Killing in Kostrak, and it is basically this little murder mystery they have to solve. I've discovered they have done a couple of murder mysteries in Menagerie. I'm not sure why I keep coming up with this plot, but the idea was that someone had killed someone important, the Javshar, or the mayor of this burg, this small orcish village, but specifically with a steel weapon. So it obviously looks like maybe the Menagerie did it, maybe they're being framed, but it's of course more complicated than that. It's a nice little plot to try to set up some of the politics I want to play with when they're in the cradle, and it also spotlights Throka Many-Mother, one of the 3 kind of primary orcish NPCs, apart from the Throck that the characters will be encountering, right? We've got Many-Mother, we've got Fine Feathers, and we've got Steel Sword. So there's a lot more to talk about with that killing when we get there next session, but I'm curious, how do you handle long stretches of downtime at your table? Do you assiduously track how many days go by? Do you keep it kind of cinematic? Have you ever had a really long stretch of downtime like this, and how did your players take to it? Post your answers in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you guys tackle it. It is with a heavy heart that I tell you that the subscribe button has been murdered. What's more, it appears that they died from a heavy force trauma, some sort of a large metallic object, possibly a bell. So I guess arrest the bell by clicking on this analogy is falling apart. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy adventuring.